All right, here we are. Hello, I'm Mary-Jeanine Ibargüen from the Sewing Studio in Maitland. Welcome to the Tips, Tools, and Techniques Club, where I'm going to share a ton of information with you. I'm saving up for 2 months here. So welcome. Thank you for logging in. Thank you for commenting where you're from. I got all kinds of great places. Gainesville and Seattle. My sister's in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Hello, Naomi. And all kinds of people. So the villages, thank you. Just keep letting us know. It's really wonderful to see how far and wide we go. I was speaking to a quilt guild in Venice, Florida. I had about 110 people there, and some of them are going to be logging on. And 2 weeks ago, I was in Palm Beach County, and hopefully they're going to be logging in. So lots of people from all over the place. I love that you're coming in from Seattle. We've had people from other countries as well. So that's awesome. Yeah, I have so much information, including this quilt behind you, but I just real quick want to tell you about some of my classes. Most of my classes are actually full this quarter, but the ones that aren't, I'm going to tell you about it just in case you are in town and you can take a class or two from me. This Tuesday night, it's a one-nighter. It's teaching you the technique to make a pineapple block, and of course you're going to make a bunch in the class and then go home and then you'll know how to make pineapple. There's some good tricks and tips to share with you. I'm teaching a machine quilting class. I do that once a quarter on Friday, February 7th. If you haven't taken my machine quilting class, it's a great one. Lollygagging is a quilt that I talked about last month, November, and everybody wanted a class, so I made it into a class. It's a 3-parter. And so again, if you're local, Heather is sick in bed. If you're local, you can come to that. Machine quilting with rulers, that's a class on a Saturday. So I know often a lot of you are working during the week and you're looking for classes on Saturdays and the nighttime. So I've got some evening and some afternoon and some Saturday classes this quarter. My t-shirt quilt class, it's in March, and I've only got 1 or 2 people signed up. It filled last time. So if you want to learn how to make a t-shirt quilt without a lot of measuring and cutting, that one is for you. And then finally, Yellow Brick Road. If you've taken my quilting basics class and you're ready for another kind of a beginner quilt class, that would be the Yellow Brick Road. And that's got plenty of room in it. So enough about my classes. Let's jump right into content. I had Tony, I'm glad you signed up for Heather, you signed up for the class. Great. I had so much to talk about with this quilt. It took quite a long time. So let's see if we can get through it all. It's a fairly simple looking quilt, but I have a lot of tricks and techniques that I want to share with you. First of all, the name of the quilt. Oh, for heaven's sakes, what did I do with this? I got a whole pile of stuff. It must be, wow. I know I had, hang on. There was a whole bag of stuff and I've got to find it. Found it. Okay, stuff on top of it. Okay. Here we go. So first of all, I used a collection of batik squares, and these are 5-inch squares, and I needed 2 packs to get enough to make this quilt. Somebody asked me this morning what was the size of the quilt. So pattern is from, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do the overhead. So here's the pattern. It's called the Kristen Quilt, and it's from Kitchen Table Quilting. Erica Jackman is the writer of this pattern. It's a fabulous pattern. I was looking for something that had the shadowy effect. There's a quilt pattern a long time ago called the Shadow Box, and it was similar except there were very sized rectangles, and this one is all squares, which is great when you've got some pre-cuts. So if you have a pack of 2 5-inch squares, this is good. If you need to make a lot more, a larger than 59 by 66, then you're going to need more packs of 5-inch squares. You can look at it on the back of the pattern. If you go, she is all over social media, and she likes to do color workups with different lines of fabric. So if you are looking for a particular line, you may go onto her Instagram, which is Kitchen Table Quilting, and you can see her mock-ups of all different types of fabrics. So she used pink as the shadow, and I used a light lavender, and then I used a white in the background. We're going to talk about how to build those blocks in just a minute. Just wanted to tell you about the pattern. The first order of business, let's look at the quilt again, Gabriella. So let's look at one block. And actually I have a single block here, but let's look at a single block. We've got a 5-inch square. Thank you. Got a 5-inch square. And then we have some shadowy fabric. And then we finally have whatever you're using for your sashing. We're going to make, actually, these are half square triangles. If you've been with me for a little while, you may remember my September tips, tools, and techniques. I spent the entire hour or two or whatever it was talking about all different ways to make half square triangles. So if you missed that, we can put up the link for my playlist of all the tips, tools, and techniques I've ever done. And you're looking for September of 2024. So we're going to talk about one particular way. Erica does it one way in the pattern, but I'm going to show you another. And I should back up just to say, let's do a full, I should back up to say I didn't do my little announcements. One is, if you haven't printed out the handout yet, which is, it's going to start with a quilt that I haven't talked about yet. This is the handout, and Gabriella in the second here is going to put the link for the handout in the comments. If you haven't gotten it printed out already, you can either print it or you can bring it up on another device. Sheila, yep, I'll be in Bradenton in a week and a half. Is it next? Yeah, a week and a half from now. And Dundee, Florida. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's been busy. I was in Palm Beach 2 or 3 weeks ago, Venice this week, Bradenton next week, and then I'll be in the Villages and Jacksonville coming up in April and May. I love to travel and visit other guilds, as you can imagine. Anyway, so handout, we're putting up the link. You can click on it and either print it or bring it up on another device. Also, everything that I'm going to be talking about today is, and if you want to purchase it, you get a 15% discount today. And you'll want to, there's the code TTT15. You get 15% off everything until Sunday at midnight. So we appreciate you supporting your local quilt shop because there's not very many left. And this one is the best. What was my third? Don't I usually have another announcement? Maybe not. We'll go with that for now. Okay, back to this quilt, half square triangles. Now, Gabriella, if you could do an overhead shot. So when I talked about half square triangles, I was really big on this product. So we're going to talk about it again. Triangulations is, I can't remember if it's a CD or DVD. Anyway, it goes into your computer and you can print out, it's files. There's files in here. If you don't have a DVD or CD player, you can buy one on Amazon for $15 external, plugs into your laptop, computer, whatever. Or you can go on to bearpawproductions.com and purchase it from her. She is brilliant. What this is files that allow you to create half square triangles, quarter square triangles, and flying geese, all with this one product. The reason I love this so much is that there's no trimming. I don't know about you, but once you create the way she's got you doing it here is you create these squares, you draw a line on the diagonal, you sew on either side, you cut it, creates 2 half square triangles, which you then have to trim. And I don't know about you, but I would rather be I'd rather be sewing than trimming. So what I'm going to show you, quick little demo here, is so you don't have to trim. So there are a lot of steps, but there's also a lot of steps in here, and I think you get a better product at the end. So let me show you what's going on here. So when you open up the file, let's say I want to do half square triangles. So there's a half square triangle PDF. And you figure out what your finished size is, and you scroll down to the page on the PDF that has that size, and you print it out. So you don't print out the entire book. You print out the page you need, and you print out multiple pages, as many as you need. I think I needed 6 of these for the size quilt behind me. You may need more pages for a larger quilt. So here it is. I'm going to bring this up so you can see it a little better. There we go. We're good. And there are dotted lines and there are solid lines. I think it's good. Yeah. So the solid line is where you cut and the dotted line is where you sew. So I was making my little demo this morning. I put my needle down here and I sewed, and you just keep going around until you're finished up, and you finish up back here again. So that you're sewing on the dotted lines. So here it is. I took, and of course you're sewing fabric. So here's my purple and here's my white. And by the way, you always put your fabric closest to your white, and you'll see why in a minute. I cut this up because I was showing it this morning. But I sewed it in red, and of course I wouldn't sew in red for a real project, but I wanted you to be able to see that red sewing. And now we're going to cut. So here's paper, and here's the 2 pieces of fabric that you're going to pin. I usually just pin like 4 pins, take it to my machine and sew. Now here's my rotary cutter. So one thing the only trimming involved is to clean up the edges. So once you've done this, and I'm ambidextrous, so I'm able to cut with both hands. Highly recommended it if you're able. And now there's no more trimming involved. I can cut this on the line. I can cut, and these all, however many, let's see, 2, 4, 6 at times 8. So there's, I can't do math when I'm 6 times 8, whatever that's a lot of pieces. There's trim lines here. So I'm going to cut those off. Those are dog ears. So now I am ready to press this open. And if you notice the paper, well, we're going to keep the paper on to the very last minute because it's keeping this stabilized. So when I'm pressing this, I keep the paper on. And you notice when I flip this over, the seams are all going to the dark. It's just the way it's built if you put your light fabric next to your paper. So what's nice is when I press this, that line stays good because it's stabilized with paper. So I press it, let it cool, and now I can take the paper off. You don't want to leave the paper in your project. And if I use a 2.0 or 1.8 stitch length, I get a beautiful half square triangle, and I did not have to trim it down. To me, that is huge. Triangulations, $27.75. You get your 15% off today. Highly recommend. A lot of people this morning said they love it. They have it because I talked about it several times before. I don't think I'll ever stop talking about it because if you have used thangles or used triangles on a paper, it's a similar concept. The problem with those two is that you have to choose when you're in the store. Let's see, let me buy some. Do I need 1.5? Do I need 2, 2.5? What size triangle do I need? Here, it's midnight. I want to start a new quilt, probably more likely 5 o'clock in the morning for me. Want to start a new quilt. I need some papers. I can go onto my computer, print out what I need. I use newsprint. Carol Doak makes a really nice newsprint. We've got it here. So it's very thin and it's easy to tear off. And I print out as many as I need and I'm ready to go. I don't have to wait till the store opens and buy the right thangles or buy them on an online store and wait for however many days or weeks. So that is my quick little thangles demo. So now we're going to do an overhead. I want to show you my, whoops, I dropped it. Show you my block. So here's the block. I'm hiding the part because I'll show it to you in a minute. So it's a very simple block. It's a 5-inch square. And by the way, this was a pack of 5-inch squares, but you got to measure them because these were a little over, like 5 1/8. So I had to trim a little on 2 sides to get it to better too big than too small, but just check your numbers. Half square triangle, piece of fabric, half square triangle. I'm not going to give you the numbers because that's in the pattern. And but so buy the pattern if you're interested. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, this is the block, okay? So she talks about how you build the block and then you add in all your sashing once you've laid your block out. I'm gonna recommend instead that you add your sashing to all your pieces before you lay out your pattern. Let's go a big shot here. It took a while. I laid out all my pieces. No, it's too dark in this corner and it's too light in that corner. So I have to finagle a little bit. I don't want two the same color touching. So it takes a little while to finagle it. So I went ahead and sewed my sashing, all my vertical pieces to my blocks. So then when I finished designing it, I could start sewing. I don't have to go back and add sashing to all my blocks and try to keep them in order. They're already in order. It's already done. So of course you take a picture once you've got it designed. Hang on to that picture because you might need it down the road if pieces fall to the ground or whatever. Okay, let's talk about how I've got some general tips for how to sew blocks together. If you were to, okay, you lay this out, let's say it's your bed or your floor, your design wall, whatever, you've got everything laid out. You really do not want to pick up two pieces, sew them together, put them back. Pick up two more pieces, sew them together, put them back. That's a lot of upping and downing. Yes, that would be your gym workout for the day, but I'd rather do a different kind of gym workout. I want to make this as efficient as possible. So here's what we're going to do. Something called webbing the quilt. You may have heard about it. Maybe you do it. I teach it in several of my quilting classes because I'm a big fan. You're kind of chain piecing your quilt together. You're going to end up with something that looks like this. And I'm going to show you how that all gets put together. But that's where we're going. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this block, put it on top of that, put it on top of that till I have one stack from the first column. Put that on top of that, on top of that, second stack from the second column, and I'm going to stack everything up until I've got all these stacks on the floor or on the table, whatever. And now I've got all my stacks ready to go. I'm going to pick up my first two stacks, and I'm going to either put them on my lap at my sewing machine or on the table next to me. I'm going to pick up the first two pieces, and I'm going to sew them together. I got a quick little show. Let's do an overhead here. So here's my first two pieces, okay, from my stack. It's like a page of a book. I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to sew this seam, okay? I'm going to tell you the biggest mistake people made, so you won't make it and you'll be happily successful. Biggest mistake, people pick this up and then they're trying to get everything straightened out. They're like, oh, where was I supposed to sew? So don't do that. You're going to lay it out, flip over the page of a book, and then if you need to do any rearranging, just do it right here, same orientation, kind of with your fingernails, scrape it over wherever it needs to be. You did not change the orientation, right? And now I'm going to sew. I am not going to cut it off the machine. I'm going to pick up the next two pieces and I'm going to chain them on. So I'm going to have a long chain. So now I'm going to pull this up again. So now I've got these two all sewn together, chained up together. Forget all that, just these two. That's what's done, all right? I'm going to pick up my third stack. I'm going to add it to the second column, add that to the second column, and so forth. So now that's all chained together, and I'm going to just keep going. I used to sew a twosie and a twosie and a twosie, and then sew the twosies into foursies and then the sixie. But it gets hard. Things get twisted and it's difficult to do. So now instead, I do two columns, add the third, add the fourth, add the fifth, and so forth. So when you're done, let's full on here again. When you're done, you're going to have something that looks like a web. It's a chained up piece. We're not done yet, of course, but that's what it should look like. And now's a good chance to check your work, to kind of lay it out, compare it to the picture on your phone to see whether all your blocks are in the right place. Sometimes they're not in a good place. And now's a good time to change it before you do anything else. Okay. What's the next thing? I had like 4 things I wanted to tell you about. Okay. The next question, how do we, Mary-Jeanine, you just sewed everything together. How are you supposed to insert your sashing in there? So let's talk about that. Let's do the overhead again. So I've already cut, let's flip it over. It doesn't really matter, I suppose. Here's my first piece. I cut the little chains of thread, just took my rotary cutter, and this is all by itself now. And I sewed a sashing to the bottom of it. And I'll talk about that more in a minute, but I want to get to the fun thing. I know this has happened to some of you because it's definitely happened to me. You start sewing this together and maybe your pieces are a little bit off or a lot off. How do we get these verticals to be head on, to be exact? She talks a little bit in the pattern about it, But to be honest, I was having a hard time following what she was saying. And to me, this, in my brain, this works well. This is what she might have been trying to say, but let me just say it again. We're going to sew this onto this. So we're going to flip it over and we're going to sew. But by the way, I always want the piece that has the most seams on the top at my sewing machine, because I want to pay attention. I don't want to get this twisted, right? I want the seams the way they were. And so I want that up on the top. But now if I were to just sew that, we have no idea if it's going to match up here, right? So here's what we do. Take our handy dandy silk pins, and I'm going to mark where that piece ended. I'm going to mark it just like this. You could do one at a time, or you could do them all at once. That one's a little off, so we got to fix it. Not that I'm going to sew it, but I want you to have a good idea. So we put a pin at each sashing. So I'm lining it up with this line. So then when I sew this, I can make sure that that seam matches up with that pin. So I pinch to that, and then I line this seam up with that pin, and I sew to that pinch, and I sew to that pinch all the way. And that's how you get those to be lined up beautifully. Let's go back to the quilt, Gabriella. So that's how you get these to be lined up so perfectly, is that exact technique that I just showed you. Okay. So let's see if I said everything I wanted to say. Yes. Yes. And I don't cut. Let's go back to the overhead. Keeping Gabriella busy today. I don't cut everything apart. And then if it would fall on the ground, I'm like, where was I? So I would just cut off one, sew something to the bottom, sew it to this piece, and then cut off the next one, sew a piece to the bottom, sew it to the neck. And so I just build it that way. So that would be a good way to create that, that design without, to me, that in my brain, that's the most efficient way to quilt that quilt, even with sashing on it. So I'm hoping that made sense. Let me know if you have questions. I haven't been looking for questions. Gabriella has been putting lots of links up on the comments. Hopefully you saw them. Hi, Terry. It's good to see you. Any questions? Yes, I think we're good. I think we're good. Okay. And I feel like there was something else. Oh, there is one more thing. So let's do a above the head shot, overhead shot again. So here's my sashing, and hopefully none of you are just taking this piece and just sewing this to a hunk of fabric, and then when you're done, you cut it off. Please don't ever do that. You need to measure this, and then you cut this the same size. Here's how I do it. Sort of. That's sort of how I do it. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to measure it. Especially with really big quilts, it's really handy to work in halves and not wholes. So I fold it in half, and I'm going to pin the halfway point, and you'll need that in a minute. You'll see why. And then I'm going to measure this. So I'm not down by my numbers because I don't think you can see me. So I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it's just a little bit less. Yeah, it's just a hair less than 8. Okay. So now I can take my sashing or border, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just a tish less than 8. And I'm going to put a pin there. And then I'm going to do it again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and just a tish less than 8. And now I know that this piece is going to match. So when I go to sew, and of course, again, that's on the bottom because it doesn't have any seams, I'm going to sew till the pins match together, and I'm going to sew till the pins match together. I do not cut this off actually until I'm finished sewing, because if it's a really big quilt, you may need an extra ½ an inch or something to make it work. And if you've cut it off, ooh, you'll be saying bad words. So go ahead and wait until it's all sewn to that piece, and then cut off your extra. And what I do to be efficient is I will do that pinning. I have a really long piece of sashing, yards and yards and yards, because I need it for the whole thing. I sew it in one long piece, and then I will take this measurement and I'll do it on each end. So when I'm at my machine, I can sew 2 pieces of sashing on before I have to cut it off and then measure the next piece. hopefully that's helpful. I am just, we could do regular shot here. I'm always looking for efficiencies. And I feel like that's one of the reasons you guys follow me sometimes, is to look for better ways to do things. Sometimes I watch people, they're putting blocks together and it's just a painstakingly slow process. I'm like, if you just assembly line them, there's ways to do this. So I'm hoping you can pick up some of these ideas. If it's just too much, you just want to go to the slow way because that's what feeds your soul, please do that. But if you're looking for more efficient ways to do things so you can get more quilts accomplished, I'm your girl. All right. If there's any questions about that quilt, please put them in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to move on from the Kristen Quilt. So there it is. There's the pattern one more time. We do have them on my favorites page right up at the beginning. I want to say the pattern is $12 and it's from Kitchen Table Quilts. Oh, and I forgot to say, she has a quilt along that's happening right now with this quilt. You're not too late to join it, and you can start from the beginning. And if she is watching right now, let us know. Kristen, I invited her because this was her quilt. I invited her to watch, but she has several children, so she may not be able to watch. But anyway, I'm going to get a sip of water here real quick. If there's any questions, we're putting up the discount sheet, and I'm about to talk about a quilt that's on the handout, so make sure you have that pulled up or printed out. All right, let's pull this one down. Hey, Mark. My drink is empty. Could you fill up my canteen for me, please? For some reason, I'm very thirsty. It's right there. I forgot to fill it after lunch, so now it's empty. Okay, put that away. And we're going to talk about this beauty. It's called Blue Popcorn, and I made it, well, I just called it that because it looks like the colors are popping, but also the other day was National Popcorn Month. So do you want me to talk about that, Gabriella, or we're going to wait? No. So we've got a shop hop. The all Florida shop hop fabrics are available for pre-order. Do we have them in stock, or but we're not? They ship March 1st, and the all Florida shop hop is from March 1st to end of April. It usually, with the last 2 years, it has been. So it probably still is. Let us know. I'm sure one of you can tell us that that's not true. But usually the all Florida shop hop is 2 months, starting March 1st. And the fabrics are online, ready for pre-order. So we're putting the link up now if you're interested in doing that. And Donna says she loves the tips. I lost it. Thank you. On the sewing sashing, yes, matching up the vertical. Well, I'm glad to let me know. Let us know next month, or send me a message. By the way, my email is on the bottom of every handout. So is my website. Thank you so much. So send me an email. Much better. Okay. Let's talk about Blue Popcorn. It is leftovers from 2 previous quilts that I've made for the store. These beautiful yellow fabrics with the yellow. It was in from my decoupage tiles quilt that I taught a couple of classes, and you guys have seen it here. It was a humongous quilt. And then some of these other fabrics were left over from Mod Designs that I probably made over a year ago. So they've been sitting there waiting patiently for me to make something fun. And so I did. And then just a collection of my neutrals from home. I love buying really, really light fabrics, either white on white or fabrics that have just a little bit of print going on, but they still recede into the background. So if you're familiar with Disappearing 9 patch, it's a little bit similar, but a little bit different. So here are the pieces you need. You need a 5-inch square. This is actually left over from the previous quilt. And then 2 pieces of background, 3 by 5, and then 3 by 7.5. And when you sew them all together, you're going to end up with something that looks like this. And the nice thing about this quilt is you can sew them like that, or you can sew them like this, and it doesn't matter. The little piece can be down here, or the little piece can be on the side, and it doesn't really matter. The quilt looks the same. Follow the picture on the handout to be able to lay it out. Let's take a look at the quilt again. But somebody today was saying that it was driving her crazy trying to put something like this together. But really, if you look at just one horizontal line, the blue square is on the bottom right, top right, bottom right, top right, bottom right, top right. The next column is the different. It's bottom left, top left, bottom left, top right. So it's just, there's two different ways to do it. The next, and then it just repeats over and over again. You'll also know that you've done it right if no blue patches are touching each other except on the very corner. If they're touching each other, then you've got something turned around. So it's just a fun, easy quilt. I'll be presenting this probably at next month's Project Linus. When you come to the Project Linus, it's a free class. Well, it's not really a class, it's a sew day, but it's free. You don't have to pay to come. And each time we teach a different, very simple quilt that everybody can go home with most of their quilt made and then they finish it. Or some of the patterns we're going to be presenting in the next few months, maybe 2 or 3 people get together, make all the blocks, and then one person takes it home and finishes it. So I'm not sure which direction we're going to go on this, but in any case, it's a very simple make. And if you're looking for a quick baby quilt, it could be any size, of course. I tell you the size mine is up at the top, but of course this can be any size. I want to say it's 2, 4, 6, 7. It's like 7 by 8 blocks. Yours can be smaller or bigger, of course. So hope you make that and let us know how that came out. If there's no questions, we're going to jump to the next handout. Again, the handouts, we're going to put the link for the handouts one more time in the comments in case you just joined us. And I'm on the second page of the handouts. So probably the most asked question for me and for probably everybody who works at the store is, do I need to wash my fabrics before I use them? Okay, big question, small answer, maybe. What you're having to worry about is dye that bleeds and fabric that shrinks. First of all, if you buy your fabric from an independent fabric store, you are buying the highest quality fabric. It's the least likely to shrink and bleed, but yes, some fabrics still do. If you buy your fabrics from a Walmart or a Joann's or whatever, you're pretty much going to have to wash them because they are going to shrink and they are going to bleed. And then you're going to have to restarch them to get them back into the format that you want, because they're all going to be limp and loose and wonky. So can you tell that I would rather buy my fabrics from an independent fabric store, because not only for all that, but I know the fabric's going to last. If you buy your fabrics, you buy cheap fabrics, your quilt, you wash it 2 or 3 times and it's going to be starting to shred up and tear. And I've seen it happen a lot. People bring me quilts that, grandma made, and you can tell that the fabric was very thin and the seams are coming apart, and I have to figure out how to fix it. Do your gifties a favor and use good quality fabric. Plus, you don't want to be spending all your precious time on fabric that's cheap. So for all those reasons, buy the good stuff. But I bring some fabric home from the sewing studio. If it's red, if it's a dark blue, if it's a dark green or black, I'm probably going to test it. If it bleeds during the test, and we'll talk about how to test it, if it bleeds during the test, you will have to process it. You will have to wash it and process it. And we'll talk about how to do that. If it doesn't bleed, you're good to go. You can use that fabric without washing it. Okay, so what do we do? What are these 3 products here on the handout? We've got, I'll get my little paper sack here. There's 3 different projects and they're not the same. They do 3 different things. So these are actually from my house. They look a little different than they've repackaged them, but you may have something at home that looks like Retain and Synthropol. They changed the name of Retain, which I thought was an awesome name. They changed it to Reactive Dye Fixative, which both of these, I don't know if these are on my favorites page or not, but you can type it in. If we didn't sell out this morning, you can type it into the search line, Reactive Dye Fixative, and it will come up. Synthropol as well. So those are the 2. These are the 2 that you would be buying, Synthropol and Reactive Dye Fixative. Okay, so what is the difference? One of them you would use while it's still fabric before you make it into a quilt, and that would be the reactive dye fixative. We'll talk about that. If the quilt has been made and you're worried about bleeding and you're worried about the dye coming off your red and landing on the white or whatever, you would use the Synthrapol. And then you can also use color grabbers, which you can find at anywhere that's got laundry soap, Walmart, Publix, whatever. So let's dive in a little deeper here. So first, we got to test our fabric, right? There's a quilt. Sometimes it's hanging here. Right now, it's hanging at the quilt show in the Villages. It's red and white, and there are 10 reds and 10 whites. And you better believe I tested every single red before I started making the quilt. Some of them ran, some of them didn't. So here's how we test it. You take a coffee mug that's white on the inside, fill it with water, microwave for 2 minutes till it's screaming hot. We're going to take just a little 1/2 inch by 2 inch piece of fabric, drop it into the coffee mug, fork it around, walk away for 5 or 10 minutes. Okay. You come back, take your fabric out. This is all written down, by the way. Take your fabric out and take a look inside your white coffee mug. If the coffee mug is still white, you're golden. You can go ahead and use that fabric. It won't bleed. If it's not white, if it's some other color, that fabric let out some extra dye, and you're going to need to process that fabric. Okay. So here's how do we process it? I take my old bottle of Retain or my new bottle of fixative, reactive dye fixative. I really don't like that name as much as I like Retain, by the way, but it's the same thing. Reactive dye fixative. Follow the directions. It wants 140-degree water. My hot water doesn't get that hot, and it's not going to end up in my washing machine that hot. So instead, I do my work in a bucket. So I fill my bucket half full with hottest water I can get out my thermometer. No, it's still only 110 degrees. Boil some water in a pot, pour it in until my thermometer says, it's about 140 degrees. Then I'm ready to put in, the old bottle said a teaspoon per yard. And this one, I was reading it this morning. It's not that simple. 1/3 of an ounce for a pound of fabric. So I don't know. I guess you're supposed to weigh your fabric. Once you weigh your fabric, and then you'll figure out, you can rewrite it for yourself, a teaspoon per yard or whatever it is. That goes into the water, swirl it around, throw in all your fabric, make sure everything is submerged, everything is getting wet. I get a one of my metal spoons, make sure, push it down really well. 20 to 30 minutes. And maybe every 10 minutes I'll come by and like rearrange all the wet fabric, make sure everything's submerged. Once that's done and it's fixed, then I dump the entire bucket into my front-loading washing machine, spin out the product, and then wash the fabric on warm, dry it on hot. Done. It's processed. Your fabric will not bleed now. Are there any questions about that? It's all written down here. So that's Retain. That's the fabric ahead of time. Okay. Let's say you've made a quilt and you're like, I never really tested that blue or that batik green or whatever it was. I need to do something about that. Maybe if you have some in your stash, you can test it, or you use Synthrapol, which again, follow the directions for hand washing or machine washing to process the fabric so it doesn't bleed on the other colors. I've had 2 quilts. One actually I sold on Etsy. It didn't even occur to me. I made it so long ago, and she washed. The first thing she did when she got it, she washed it, and all the red went all over everything. Of course, I gave her money back, but neither one of us were very happy about it. So make sure you test your fabrics. And then finally, we have something called color grabbers, which kind of look like bounce sheets. I will put 2 or 3 of these in with a brand new quilt. And when I gift a quilt, I try to remember to safety pin 2 or 3 to the back of the quilt and explain that that needs to go into the washing machine the first time they wash it, the quilt. And what happens is all that extra dye is just running around in the water. The Synthrapol would take care of that extra dye. It doesn't allow it to land, but the color grabbers will literally pull the color dye out of the water and land on this. You're successful when it comes out a different color than white. somebody this morning says she reuses these until they're a dark color, and she just throws in a new one each time, but reuses the old one. So that's certainly an option. So that's color grabbers. Oftentimes Publix has, we don't carry them, but often Publix has them 2 for $1. So on our Project Linus Facebook page, somebody will post, they're 2 for $1 at Publix, time to stock up. So that's what that's about. And any questions about testing and making sure those fabrics stay the color you expected them to stay, let me know. But I haven't, it's been a long time, if ever, that I've talked about that. So I wanted to be sure to talk about it. Let's see. The next 2 things, Gabrielle is going to get close and personal because I'm going to talk about hand sewing needles. I asked this morning for a show of hands, how many people hand sew? And there was just a handful. But sometimes you have to hand sew, and I love hand sewing. I do a lot of English paper piecing. This is actually my little travel kit. My scissors are always falling down, so I attached it to a ribbon, which is attached to the zipper, and I threw on a bunch of, sometimes when I'm embroidering, and I mostly use white bobbins, and there's a little bit of thread left. I don't want to start the next project until with a bobbin that's almost used up, so I will throw it in my hand sewing and then I use it. But I really like using silk thread to sew, and it's a size 100. Actually, these are all size 80 or 100, so they're very fine. So 2 things I want to talk about, and this is self-threading needles. And let's see, what are we going to do here? Are you using Synthropol and color catchers at the same time or separate uses? Good question, Donna. I would use Synthropol if you've got it. I think it works better than the color catchers, but the color catchers, if you don't have Synthropol, give that a try as well. But they do slightly different things. Thank you. All right, so are we doing overhead or are we doing close up? Okay. All right. So I don't try overhead. Well, once it gets into focus here. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I guess got to stay in the cake. So I've got some black thread here so you could see with my pasty white hands. I'm just going to cut a piece here. And this is a self-threading needle. Here's the package, which Clover. I love Clover. Everything they sell is awesome. And there's some different sizes. It looks like 5 different needles. And if you look at my tomato at home with all the different needles, it's probably half of them are self-threading needles. So self-threading means all I have to do is put it on the top and pop it through, and it's threaded. So if you have trouble, you just want to do a simple hem and you just want to thread up a needle real quick, self-threading needles are the bomb. I think I remember my mom had some, and so they've been around for a really long time. So there's a little U at the top and a little tiny hole. And you just kind of, I'll do it again in case you didn't see it the first time. There you go. And I take the needle and just pop it through, and there it's threaded. Okay. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about is self-threading needles. It's on my favorites page from Clover. Okay. The other thing, I don't know about you, but I have had, when I'm hand piecing and I'm sitting in my camper or I'm sitting in the truck and we're going down the road, and if I have a needle that's come out of my the thread, it's just, I'm having to look everywhere for the needle or the thread. And I would really, really like I have to cut this one off because I would really like my needle and my thread to stay together is what I'm trying to say. You could double your thread and put a knot and then never have to worry about it again. But I don't want to sew my English paper pieces with a double thread. So I'm going to show you how to attach your thread to your needle, and it's going to stay without making a knot. So I'm going to thread my needle. And by the way, when I thread my needle, I kind of squeeze the thread and kind of push the needle in. And it's kind of hairy, but it worked. Okay, so there it is. Your mileage may vary, but hopefully you've got a good way to thread your needle. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna marry my thread to my needle, and I've got a website for you to watch another video in case I wasn't clear. But I've threaded the needle. I got about 2 inches off. I'm gonna pinch that about the 2-inch mark, and I'm going to run my needle through the thread. And there it is once. If you can see that, I'm going to do it 2 or 3 more times. Get rid of that. So 2. No, well, yeah, that worked. And then 2 more times. 3. I'm not pinching it very well. I did my nails this morning just so this would look nice. 3, and then 1 more time. And usually it doesn't take this long. Okay, there it is. I've gone through 4 times. I don't know if you can see all that. And now I'm going to grasp the tip of my needle, pull the thread as far as it'll go. And now I'm going to slide that thread through. And now that needle is not coming off. It's called marrying the thread to the needle. And I'm going to put a knot at the other end, of course, dirty finger roll. And there it is. I'm ready to sew. And eventually I'll get to the very end and I have to cut that off because it is not going anywhere. I'd say 1 out of 25 times I've really worn my thread down to a nub and it comes out. But most of the time it does not. And I'm so excited about this. I found out about it right before I left on my trip, and I brought my sewing with me, and I never had to worry about my needle coming out. So marrying the thread to the needle, and I have a website. Tiny URL. We can type this into the comments as well, but it's MJ Mary Up. And that sends you to a completely different video where she is showing you how to do that. And Nancy, hello, Eagle Lake. What are you doing, Eagle Lake? Oh, different. I'm thinking of a different Nancy. Sorry. Let's see. Hello, everyone. Great tip. Isn't that though? I love that. Lifelong struggle. I know. Seriously, it is a lifelong struggle. As much as I love to hand sew, that has been my nemesis. That has been my bugaboo all the time I've ever sewn. When I teach kids how to sew, of course, I double up the thread because I don't want to be threading their needle every 5 minutes. But now solved. Marrying the thread to the needle. And Gabriella is putting the link up so you can just click on it and go straight to the other video. Not right now because you want to continue watching me, but if you want to watch another video, really practice it a few times so you don't have to completely forget about this tip because it's a good one. Okay, got 2 more quick things to talk about, and then I will say adieu. So let's do a head-on. Thank you very much. Raggedy bags. I've talked about this once or twice before. Somebody came into my classroom I've been teaching here 23 and a half years. A long time ago, she came in with a little purse and I thought, oh my gosh, that's adorable. And I went to look for a pattern so I could teach it, and there was no pattern. So I wrote one, and it's in here somewhere. Hang on a second. It's called Tic-tac-toe Raggedy Bag. And there it is. So we've got some of those available on my favorites page. But let's just do a quick video, see what they look like. Got a red, white, and blue one with red handles. Red, white, and blue is in the interior as well. And these 2 quilts, actually all 3, this is a great time to use up the last little bits from a quilt project. I can't even remember what project this, oh, I know, it was my swoon quilt. Probably 15 years ago. So that's left over from the swoon quilt, and this is left over from a project called All Fired Up, or I don't remember what it was. Anyway, long time ago. But the point is, you've got some fabric left over, and they all go together. If there's really not a lot left, I bet you have room for enough space or enough fabric for a quilt. These are pretty small squares. These are larger squares. These are medium squares. You can make them any size, really. So I'm going to do a quick little demo on how to make these. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention it, but these have pockets on the inside, which is very handy. So the pattern talks about how to build the pockets, but this has a 2-sided pocket, and then this is a single pocket. This is almost a reversible bag, but there's a big pocket there. So we're going to talk about how to put pockets in too, but just wanted to show you that real quick. Handles, these are covered cotton webbing. You could also, we've got a lot of great trim here in the store, and this was a while ago, but this, I think this is 2 different pieces put wrong sides together, so it looks good on both sides. I don't put the handles on until I've washed and dried the quilt, the bag, at least once, so the handle doesn't get a lot of wear in the washing machine. Okay, so let's talk about a quick demo on how to make those puppies. You're going to start with 3 pieces. Let's do an overhead. you're going to start with, this is the inside of the bag. And by the way, I'm always looking for light colored flannel because the flannel is going to come to the front in the edge here and you want it to bloom as much as possible. I mean, yes, you could just use regular fabric, but a homespun or a flannel is going to really rag up nicely. And then I've used 2 layers of, you know, every time I do this demo, it bugs me. And here I am with a rotary cutter, so I'm going to fix this once and for all. And I've done this demo many times. So I'm using 2 layers of batting here because it's a purse and I want it to be a little more substantial. Center that. I'm leaving about 3/4 of an inch. You could do more or less. And then finally, your outside of your bag, fashion fabric, if you will. And we're going to sew. I sewed either circles or X's, hence the name Tic-tac-toe. But, you know, you can have any little design just in the center, not on the edges. All right. So once you've done that, here's one with an O and one with an X. And now we're going to sew them together, wrong sides together. You're going to sew a seam here because, of course, you want that thing to rag on the outside. So here's one where I've sewn 3 together. I wouldn't start doing the clipping until the whole thing is created. But let's talk about a pocket real quick. So this is 4 squares. It's not the complete bag, but I have enough so I can make a pocket. So I took 2 pieces of orange, sewed them right sides together, you know, top stitch across. So this is my pocket. And now if I put it just like this and throw some pins in here, I could just pretend it's not even there and just continue construction with my bag. And then when I'm done, there's a a nice big pocket, which you could draw a line, sew a line or whatever if you wanted to. But that's kind of in a nutshell how these are built. I'm going to show you one more. Yeah, it's this one. So this one has 2 smaller ones. So all I did was I put it in the center of the 9 blocks, inserted in the center. So if you were to look really closely, you would see, and this one didn't even have enough fabric, but it's a pieced pocket. But yeah, it's just inserted in there and you can't even tell that there's a little extra fabric in the raggedy, but that's from the pocket. The pocket is behind this guy. Hopefully that made sense. I would love for you to purchase my pattern, Tic-tac-toe raggedy bag, and that you can find that on my favorites page, which I know Gabrielle has been putting that up in the comments section. Yeah, let's see. Hi, Linda from Palm Bay. Okay, so that was the raggedy bag. One more thing to show you. I lost my paper down here. Oh, so I want to show you. It's been a while since we talked about these. Gabrielle and I did a video. The last time I talked about these at Tips, Tools, and Techniques, I had so much response, decided to make a separate standalone video for this bag. And I was looking yesterday and there's like 62,000 views. When I die, I think that's what I'll be known for. That's my viral video. So it's a very simple bag. It has a zipper. This has no pockets. We can talk about how to put pockets. The beauty of this design is that the zipper is not at the top of the bag. And I don't know about you, but trying to insert that zipper and get both ends to look right, I can't do it. I've never been good at putting zippers on the top. So I thought, what happens if I put that zipper, bring it down a 1/2 inch or an inch there, and then it's much easier to sew and it works just as easily. So I'm going to stand here for just one more minute and talk about what you need to make this happen. And then we're going to go to the machine and I'm going to zip that puppy up. You're not going to believe how easy it is. Okay, I need beautiful piece of cork. You do not have to use cork. You can use vinyl, which is embroidered, which was super easy. I couldn't believe how easy it was to embroider vinyl. You can use clear vinyl when you're going to a concert. They may want to see your purse, may want clear. You can use decorator fabric. I feel like I had some more, but I don't know what happened to them. So there's some ideas. This is cork as well. Oh, here's one more that fell out of the bag. This one I carried all last summer, and I love cork because it does not show wear. The purse that I carry, I've been carrying it for 2 years, I think. It's made out of cork, and it's still in perfect condition. This one I boxed the corners Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, but that gives you a little bit more space. So anyway, we need 7 by 17-inch piece. By the way, it's on the handout and it's on the video. And by the way, that video, I put it in the handout, so it's circular. The handout's in the video and the video's in the handout. So here it is right here, tinyurl.com, MJ/MJ 3-step bag. Make sure you do the uppercase where it's needed to be. So the video, you can watch the standalone video. You can be the 62,000th and one person. You can use a lacy type strip, but I've never tried it. So when I do have some lacy strips at home that I've been meaning to try. So I'm going to try that when I get home and see, and you can try it too and let me know what you think. Okay, I said 3 things. One, you need the bag. I need some trim. We just put in on the wall. It's brand new because I was taking tape off everything. This is a beautiful trim that's got some substance to it. So that's beautiful. We have all kinds of stuff. Some of it's decorator trim. We have thin. Every time you come, it's different. So it's the hardest thing is matching your zipper to your trim. I realize in this light, it's not, in the other light, it looked good, but in this trim, in this one, it's a little off, but that's okay. It's fine. And in fact, yeah, so some of it matches perfectly and sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. But, you know, if you want to match it, the zippers are right on the other side of the aisle from the trim, so you can go back and forth until you find something you like. So that's what I need. 7 by 17. This is 1.5 yards for my body. I need about 1.5 yards. And then at least a 9-inch zipper. To be honest, this actually is 8.5, and it's a tiny bit short, but I'll make it work and you'll be able to see me struggle. Okay, so now we are ready to go to the machine. And Gabriella's gonna make sure that let me get my glasses. Find my glasses. Uh-oh, I've lost my glasses. Let's see if I can make this without my glasses. You see them? I don't know how I managed to lose them. Oh, there they are. Okay, good. Back in business. All right, I can't see the screen, so I'm going to trust you to make it happen, and Gabriella. All right, so here's my piece, short end. There's 4 sews for the zipper. So the first sew is we're going to match it right sides together with the cork or whatever your piece is. I'm going to, well, actually my needle is all the way over. I forgot to switch over to zipper foot, but don't worry, you don't need a zipper foot. I'm going to move my needle all the way to the left, and I'm going to push up against the zipper foot so my stitch is as close to the zipper teeth as possible. Some of you may not realize, I don't know if you want to scroll over here, some of you may not realize that if you own a zigzag foot and you're in straight stitch mode, you can move your needle left and right with your stitch width button. So I was at 0, which is in the far left, but if I wanted to put it in the middle, I could hit my stitch width button. I think 3.5 for this machine is the center, and it moved the needle over, but I want 0, so I'm going to keep moving it over. Come on. I got to push it harder than I thought. Okay, so I move my needle all the way over. And we'll hit the gas, crank it up just a little. And yes, you could put pins. Yes, you could put wonder clips, but you notice I'm just using my fingers here just to keep everybody in line. And I'm pushing the zipper teeth up against the foot. It's that simple, nothing complicated. You can see me do it here. And you know what? I'm going to hit this head. So I'm going to lift up the foot, kind of slide the zipper head out of the way. There we go. And finish the sew. Stop. I'm going to use my thread cutter. Now I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to flip it down. So I'm going to sew through. When I top stitch on the brown, I'm sewing through this layer, that layer, and the zipper. So that's 3 layers. Yes, you probably should use a walking foot, but it works pretty well. Now this time, I'm going to move my needle back to the center. And I'm going to find a line that I can kind of eyeball to make sure. The most important thing here is that your line is straight. You don't want to be deciding as you go where that should be. So, and I'm going to crank up the stitch length a little here. So it needs a little push to get started. So I'm just going to skip a few stitches and here we go. So I'm just kind of eyeballed. I found a place on my foot to keep that fold. And again, let's get that out of the way. Managing the zipper is the biggest thing. Let's get it out of the way the other way. Let's do that. Okay, here we go. I had a lady this morning that said she's made hundreds of these and she can make one in 7 minutes. So there you go. Cut the thread. And now we're going to take this piece and I'm going to close my zipper, well, maybe halfway open. And I want to make sure that the side is matched up. And then it's going to be, again, matched up with the edge of that zipper. So however you're going to make that happen, I'm just going to slide. I'm going to sew from here because my zipper head's on the other side. 6 of one, half dozen the other. As long as you're sewing, it doesn't matter. And it's not my home machine, so I'm trying to get used to this here. And I'm going to leave my needle down, move my zipper head out of the way. Come on, there it goes. Okay, now I can finish that sew. Cut my thread. And now this is why you need a longer zipper, because you can get in here, and the longer the zipper is, the easier to get in here and sew this line down. As you can see, if just another ½ an inch and I wouldn't even have to struggle this hard. But I'm, again, just top stitching it down. I'm making, like, feeling with my thumb down below, make sure the fabric is all lined up. And again, the most important thing here is a straight line. So just find some place on your foot to line up and just do the whole thing the same way. Okay, done. So I've sewn the zipper on 4 sews and it's done. All right, so there it is. Close it up mostly. So I'm going to decide, I want about ½ an inch above the zipper. Okay, so there's my bag. Okay, I forgot my Wonder clips, but that's okay. I've made enough of these that I can do this without a Wonder clip. Of course, your strap needs to be on the inside, which is eventually the outside. But I'm going to poke it right up here on the very top. This is a good place for a Wonder clip, but again, I don't have them here in front of me and I don't want to go get them. So I'm just going to sew that by just holding it. And you are going to want to reverse stitch on that handle, that strap. Somebody asked me this morning, isn't this zipper teeth going to break your needle? No, these plastic zipper teeth are amazing. I'm not sure if I would sew all the way through, but what I can do is hand walk my needle. This is a really fat one, so I just hand walked my needle over that. And I'm going to sew all the way to the end, cut my thread. I may box my corners later. So as you can see, it's sewn through. I probably should go back over that a couple more times, but I'll do that later. Okay. Now I'm going to take my strap, make sure it's not twisted, because I'm going to finish this puppy right here today. You're going to see how easy and fast it is. So I made sure it's not twisted, and I'm going to match this side up with this. So I need to fold it over just a little bit less, like that. And that's going to go right up against it. Again, Wonder clip would be awesome. Make sure your zipper is halfway open. Otherwise, once you finish sewing, you're not going to be able to get into your bag and flip it out. And here we go. I'm not doing any magic here, guys. That's how easy this is. I'm lucky here the zipper tape, it doesn't go up, so I don't even have to worry about running over the zipper. I can just sew, and I'm going to do a back space here so the zipper stays closed. And then I'm going to do a back space here so the strap stays on. I'm done. I could box the corners, but I'm not going to. I'm going to finish opening this up if I can. And then flip it right side out, and the bag is done. And I'm going to walk while I'm flipping this right side out so we can do a different view here. How cool is that? I love this bag. I have a whole, as you can see, a wardrobe of them, all the different colors. If you wanted to box the corners, you could, and that looks really good. And the one I carried last summer all over the state of New York. Funny story, there was a shop in Ithaca, New York, same place of Moosewood Restaurant. I was thrilled to be there. And it was all handmade purses. So I walk in with this little purse and she fell in love and she said, do you sell them? I said, no, but I could trade them. And so I traded my bag for another one that she loved. And so I got a new bag out of the whole thing. So there it is, done. It's so beautiful with the cork. Cork is very, as you could see, it's very easy to sew through. It didn't take a special needle, doesn't take special thread. Yeah, I mean, it's not the cheapest thing you ever sewed with, but it is gorgeous and it lasts forever. I'm just going to step over here and show you. This is the bag I've been carrying for 2 years, and you can't. Well, there's a little bit of wear on the corner, but this is a 2-year-old bag, and you could there's barely any wear on the corners. So cork wears beautifully. I think my favorite thing about cork. My last purse was really heavy, and I realized it was because it was leather, and the purse itself weighed a lot, and I was tired of carrying a heavy purse. So cork weighs nothing at all. This is literally, it weighs nothing at all. So I've made myself a cork purse so I wouldn't have to carry a heavy bag around. Using a quarter, you know what? You don't have to measure as long as it's the same. It was probably a little over 1/4 inch, but I didn't really measure. Just make sure you make seam. It's not a quilt, so you don't have to have, looks like it was a very generous 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 inch. Yeah, so please give this a try. It's that easy. And we put up the, I think Gabriella put up, oh no, it's the video for me doing this a year or two ago is in the handout, tinyurl.com, MJI 3-step bag. So give it a try. You're going to love them. They make great gifts. And thrilled to be able to show that to you. If there's no other questions or comments, I think that is it for today. Boy, I went through that really fast. I think this morning we had a break and we had lots of questions and it was like a 2-hour thing. So I got it all done in a little over an hour. Thank you for staying with me. And I hope we see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.